Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Preeminent Producer Podcast. Today, our three coaches, Rick Gregson, Matt Starkey, and Christian Wright, is going to be diving into a foundational principle that is taught inside of our program. If you're truly trying to become preeminent and become the preeminent producer, what we're talking about in this episode is going to be key. So, let's dive in.
Are you a commercial insurance producer struggling to stand out from the competition? Do you find it challenging to grow your book of business and create a fulfilling career? If so, then welcome to the Preeminent Producer Podcast. Each week, we'll be tackling important topics, sharing proven strategies and insights from successful producers that are in the trenches and have traveled the journey to becoming a preeminent producer. You'll discover what it really takes to become preeminent and build your book of business in a way that isn't being taught anywhere else. Our hosts are experts in the field and have built thriving businesses by becoming the most trusted advisor to their clients. Welcome to your journey to becoming a preeminent producer. Let's dive in.
All right, guys. So on this journey of becoming a preeminent producer, this is obviously not a one and done thing. This is a ever growing, ever progressing journey that we're on here. But let's talk about for a moment, really one of our primary, one big step that's in our 12 steps that we teach inside the program. And that is preeminent producers always are practicing and they never stop trying to improve. And I think that's huge. I know that probably ties into mindset, but also what you're doing. So let's talk for a minute about that. What do you guys think about never stopping to improve, that growth mindset? What do you guys think?
I think professionals always are practicing. You know, the things that you remember, Tiger Woods works with a coach. Pilots go back in for retraining, we hope. And most professionals, now, if you have a job, you don't practice. If you have a career, I think you do practice, you dedicate time. My favorite story that I tell all the time, and for you other coaches, you've heard it a million times, was seeing an interview with Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning, who goes back to a college campus every off season and works with a coach. And I thought he worked with a coach to the new designs of defenses, the new offensive, new personnel, all of those sort. Absolutely not. He goes back and works on the very basics of footwork, ball release, his own mechanics, has nothing to do. He goes back to the absolute basic blocking and tackling, if you will, that he worked on from junior high throughout his career. And his career, he feels, has been a Hall of Fame career because he never stopped trying to improve.
You know, what I've discovered in practicing is that, and this is probably universal with people. First of all, sometimes you don't like the sound of your voice, but it gives you an idea how you're coming across. And what I've discovered over the years, our primary form of practicing in my agency has been, in prior years, we created a slew of videos. And each of the three principals at the time participated in those. And when you play it back and see how you're coming across, or when you observe one of your associates, you know, making the presentation or whatever it is that you're practicing, I find that you just learn a lot and you learn a lot about yourself, and it's easy to offer constructive criticism to each other. Now, in my agency, and this is just human nature, we tend from time to time to slack off. We haven't really ingrained that, being honest with everybody here, as a real habit that we do constantly every week or every month or whatnot. And I'd love to hear from you guys, because I know Rick and Christian, you guys have really fostered that mindset in your agency of the practice. I'd love to hear how frequently you guys do that. But my major point is, every time I've done that, I've learned something or picked up on some habit or gesture or something that's not really coming across the way I thought. Things that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best reasons to practice. And I come back to, we are professionals, you know, doctors practice medicine, attorneys practice law, preeminent producers practice insurance. And it's not just in the fact that we're constantly learning, but to be able to practice, you have to also be vulnerable and be willing to accept criticism with an eye towards perfection. And, complacency, success breeds complacency. And I think that the problem is some people become very successful and they think that they could sit on their laurels. And as soon as that happens, man, the competition just eats you alive. And it can be very, very devastating to someone who's had success. And it can come it can just blindside you. And I think that to your point, Matt, practicing is so important because you learn about yourself, you learn how you're coming across to your clients and prospects. And so the answer to your question is we do it pretty frequently. With new producers, we practice all the time. With seasoned producers, we still practice. No one is immune to being in the hot seat and pretending that they're going out to see a specific prospect or client. And we're all professionals, so we treat one another as we would want to be treated. But yeah, I practice, and it's amazing what, sometimes I'll get tripped up and I have my other producers help me with that. But it's a good thing. It also provides some bonding with our production staff as well.
Yeah. I think the other thing that when you get into this business, and you've been in this business for a while, as the three of us have, selling styles should change. They are radically different than when I was a young guy trying to make my way into the insurance industry. If I did now what I did then, I would be selling auto parts at Napa Auto Parts over a counter someplace. The sales process has evolved as it should have evolved. And if you're stuck in the old ways of doing this, practice will show that, especially if you've got some younger people who may not even know the insurance business well, but and sometimes those are the very best people to practice with, because they're more of a real consumer than another veteran.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Rick. As a tiny bit of a tangent, guys, but when you were discussing that and styles, I think it's good to acknowledge, and I think this is great advice, for us old timers, but especially maybe a younger producer who's just getting into this. I think each of us has a certain style that will be somewhat unique to us. And, if we try to be something we're not, it just doesn't work, right? So I think the prospect and clients, any of us, we can tell when somebody's being phony or when they're not really comfortable in, and when I started in this industry, I had a mentor, I'll say, a horrible mentor, a negative barometer mentor who I've shared some of this with you guys in the past. I was a kid. I was in, to me, late 20s is a kid now because I'm pretty old. So I was a kid, I was in my late 20s, and he was giving me advice on how to close and how to make a presentation and then stare them down and don't talk. He who goes first, loses. And I guess to my credit, even though I was pretty young, I knew that there was no way I was going to do that, but I guess it worked for him, So I guess my point is, you got to be true to yourself. I guess don't try to be somebody you're not. And within that framework of whatever your personality is, there's plenty of techniques and verbiage and whatever that you can fit in there that will work.
Yeah, I think that everyone, no matter who you are, you have room for growth.
Yeah.
And admitting that you have room for growth is being, I think, a professional. But it's funny that you said that about your mentor. I had a mentor, and he taught me everything I shouldn't do, and he thought he was telling me everything to do. But my career took a change for the positive and really took off. My success in sales took off when I stopped trying to be something I wasn't, and I was true to myself. And a lot of that comes back to actually practicing, hearing myself, Sure, I would read books, I would attend sales seminars and, try to absorb what I could from other salespeople. But at the end of the day, as one of you said early, people read through books. I mean, and if you're trying to be someone you're not, you've just hit that BS meter out of the park. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. That's true. Matt, you've said something really great, because if you're listening to this podcast and you're a young producer, that's great. Make things your own. If you're listening to this podcast and you are a sales leader, a sales manager, and you're teaching the young producers, make sure you understand that you're giving them information and giving them these ideas, and emphasize, make this your own. Don't try to use my words. Don't try to do it the way I do. It's a concept that we want you to deliver, but you have to put it in your own words. Be conversational with it. Don't be reading from it. And the only way you're going to be comfortable with it, put it in your own terms and your own words. And that way it will flow much more naturally. And it's going to take a little while. That's why you want to practice internally, because it's what we call a low risk practice. If I'm practicing with Christian and I blow it, we're all going to laugh. Doesn't cost me any money, didn't cost me a prospect or a client, and it helps me get better. So just remember, make it your own, as Matt said, and coaches, sales leaders, help people make it their own.
So guys, with that being said, and you all have touched on this, speak for a moment about what would you tell a producer, maybe whether it's brand new or someone that has reached a certain level of success, but they've kind of taken their foot off the gas, and now they're in this place of it's not the always striving to improve, always trying to improve. What would you say to someone who doesn't have that mindset of always trying to improve? How do you overcome that? Maybe you guys have even experienced that in your own careers, where there's times and seasons where you're tired, you don't want to improve right now. How do you overcome that? And what advice do you have for someone who's struggling with not having that same outlook or mindset of always trying to improve?
I think one of the best things that you can have for yourself are goals. And if you set goals and you visit those goals on a regular basis, when you hit those slumps of motivation, or you hit those slumps of energy, which we all do, we all will. If you can keep your eye on the prize and go, what is what I'm doing now leading me closer to the goal or farther away from the goal? And I think you need kind of an existence system around. You've got to have something. I'm looking for mine right now, and you've got to have something here that
like a vision board.
Not really a vision board, but something that keeps me on.
Sweet.
I look at that and go, yep, I want that. And that has helped me obtain that, actually. And those existences, and a vision board is fabulous. Yeah, so because we all are going to hit that slump, we're going to hit that, it just doesn't work for me this week. If I would sit down with a producer and they say, hey, listen, I had a horrible week. Nothing clicked. And the response is, that's okay. It's a long game. It's okay. I don't want to hear it next week, but every now and then, just be honest with me. We just had a bad week. And let's go back to what you want to do, what your goal is, why it's important to have that goal. In other words, why do you come to work every day? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And if we can keep your eye on the prize here, then we can get through those slumps, I think.
I think also it's important when you hit those slumps, Rick, and yeah, we all do, is to just, I would advise the person to take a minute and look introspectively, why are you in a slump? Is it health reasons? Is it family reasons? Is it, I'm just tired? Is it, I don't have anything in my pipeline? Is it, I need a break? I need a vacation. I need a break. We're human. We get to that point. The goal, I love your idea of having that. Of course, the listeners can't see it, but was that a Porsche or Ferrari, whatever the car was you just showed?
It's a Porsche.
Yeah.
And it was my dream to own a Porsche.
So, you know, having the motivation is so important. But I would also say, you know, be realistic with yourself. What's got you in that slump? Realize salespeople always have slumps, and it's not if, it's a matter of when. And the true preeminent producers will pull themselves out of it. I think what I do is I just tell myself, there's better days ahead and there's a million more prospects out there. So get in the fight and let's go. But, you know, I guess maybe that's easier said than done, but that's what I do.
Well, you know, when you've been doing this long enough, you get knocked down. You got to keep getting back up. Slumps are a reality. I'm so glad that both of you guys mentioned that, because it's a reality. I guess we all experience that. Sometimes the answer could be you need to take a day off. You know, it could be if you're, you know, it's counterproductive sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it can be counterproductive if you've let some bad habits creep in or something, just to try to brute force your way through, you know, that plateau, rather than, one of the favorite things that I say quite a bit is taking the time to take a half step back, take a time out and think about, you know, logically what's going on, and the answer may become, you know, readily apparent. The other thing I wanted to mention, and Rick, you brought this up, the idea of having measurable goals. See, it's easy to go for a day and say, I didn't produce anything today, literally nothing. That can happen for a week, right? But if you have measurable goals, then over the course of 2 weeks or a month, you can see that you're hitting or not hitting those goals, right? So to have something measurable is I think super valuable.
I think that's great. Now, you guys have mentioned role playing and things of that nature to really always be improving the sales skills. When it comes to this thought of always be improving, is it solely sales skills as a preeminent producer, or is there anything else that a producer should be focused on, or does it all come down to improving the sales skills?
No, I think it's a number of things. I really do. I think it's, you're always on duty and you're always prospecting. And you need to practice to remind yourself when you go into a business meeting, a social meeting, you need to hone those skills when you do approach people, that you're not the salesy insurance guy or gal, that you are a business person in the community. You are the owner of your business. You're the president of Me Incorporated if you're not a principal in your agency. You need to talk as a business owner to a business owner. I think that's part of it. Work on confidence, which I know can be very difficult for people, but understand that. Go in with the attitude that what you do is critically important to the success of the business community and of the people you're talking to. Look professional. Communication skills, I think, are very important. Guys, you can probably pick up on even more.
You know,
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. Everything you said is exactly right. And it strikes me that overall, I think you used the word mindset in that response, Rick. There is an overall mindset that we have to have. And to your point about, you know, you're providing an important function and service. It's true. And what I wanted to say is that none of what you just said falls into the category of, okay, we're fooling ourselves and we're just kind of psychologically trying to, you know, have a mindset that's not really based in reality. You know, the mindset that a preeminent producer needs to have, it's all based in reality. This is commercial insurance. We're providing an incredibly important function to the economy. It makes the economy possible. It makes risk taking possible. We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah, to me, practicing, and I actually just Googled the definition of practicing, and it is, in fact, observing or teaching the rules of a particular occupation or religion, profession. So to me, when we talk about practicing, Paul, Yeah, we practice the sales process, and that's part of it. But my gosh, this is who I am as a professional. So I'm always questioning how do our proposals look? How are we stacking up against competition? How am I personally? How do I feel health wise? How do I come across to people? How am I dressing? I mean, it's so important, I think, to never accept where you are and always push to become better. And the only way you get better is practicing. So that may seem a little philosophical, but I mean, the fact is that, you know, we practice sales, sure, but that is such a small piece of being preeminent and being the top of your profession. I mean, it's just, you know, when I say that, I don't want to come across, because if I'm a listener listening to this, they're probably thinking, man, Christian is just never satisfied. That's not true. I am very much satisfied, but I just want to be the best. I want to get better and better and better. And sometimes when I find myself in a slump, coming back to that, you know, I do think, okay, how do we get better? You know, because sometimes being in a sales slump is you know, I've got my butt kicked a couple of times, you know, going out, and it just, it hurts. It hurts personally. So, you know, that lifeline I give myself is some introspection, as well as, you know, looking at our processes and things. So
I think also preeminent producers, if you are striving to be a preeminent producer, you will never accept average. And I think we've talked about this before, that you hit that plateau of, wow, I just made $100,000. I am done. This is more money than I've ever made in my life or ever thought that I would make. That's a plateau to blow through many times. And if you're going to be preeminent, you're going to show up every day and do your very best. Every day is the Super Bowl, and you're going to do that. Of course, every day isn't the Super Bowl. As we said, you're going to have those off days. But if you show up and you make a career and you want to be preeminent, average is not in your vocabulary and should not be.
And something we've probably all discovered is, yeah, you work hard, but it becomes fun at the same time, right? If you have established certain goals and you hit them, if you've evaluated some of your sales, listening skills, whatever, there's so much to it, you know, with these personal interactions with these clients and prospects, and you master something that you had identified as a weakness, and now you've mastered that, that makes it fun. Of course, success, which this all leads to, makes this whole business more fun.
Right.
And in some ways easier at the same time. You know.
Let me add one thing before I hate myself more than I do. The existence system for a Porsche, if I were a young producer out there, I would hate me for that. And I hate me for that already. That was a terrible thing to do. I worked in this business for a very, very, very long time before I got my used Porsche. So I apologize for that, because even I look at me and think that is such a terrible thing to do and say, but it was the idea of something I was striving for, something in addition to being a professional and providing service for my clients and financial security for my family. It was something that I really, really, really reached for. And so I apologize to you young guys who go, I hate that old guy.
Nah,
Christian, let him have it. Let him have it, Christian.
Come on, Rick. No way. Don't you ever apologize for wanting more. You know, that actually, to me, you know, a salesperson, who's going to be successful, a producer, whatever you want to call yourself, you've got to be motivated by money. You can't. You absolutely do. And I think that, you know, it's. Please don't ever do that. And if a young producer is upset by you wanting a Porsche and talking about that, you know, maybe that young producer could also be motivated by just winning. You know, that sounds really trite, but I mean, I really get off on just beating my competition and winning the business. To me, that's a yes. And for what it's worth, I celebrate that with my staff, because I don't sell insurance on my own. I have people internally that maybe take my submission and market it, and they're involved. And for what it's worth, we have a very much of an open door policy, so everyone's kind of engaged. And we hit that account, we all celebrate because we've all had a part of it. And that actually helps me as a salesperson to realize that I'm not just in it for me. Now, we talk about Me Incorporated, you do have to put yourself first, but if you can celebrate wins with some other people, that makes it fun too.
Celebration is so great, and I think so underused in this industry. I know several years ago, we had a very, very large account, and we had only had competition on this account once in its entire history. And I was sweating out the phone call, got the phone call, and the phone call started from the CFO. Hi, Rick. I never like to share, because it was a voicemail, I never like to share information like this by voicemail. And at that point, I didn't know what to do. And he said, I apologize. Yeah, I know. He said, I apologize. Of course, we are staying with you. And then my heart rate dropped back down again. And then everything was okay. But I called the guy back and said, Brian, thank you so much for the information. But so I said, I tell you what, as soon as I hang up, I'm going out and we're opening up champagne. And it was a large restaurant group. And he said, you know what? We have grown so much here, and we have champagne all over the place because our headquarters is right below one of our restaurants. We don't drink champagne often enough. I don't think any of us do. Or whatever your celebratory drink or process or celebration is, take time to celebrate. That brings you out of the average. And you are right, Christian. When we celebrate here, when I celebrate, it's with my team, because although I might be president of Me Incorporated, when I go out in the community, I'm just part of a team here. And without my team behind me and all these people here, again, I'm working at Napa Auto Parts, selling auto parts across the counter. They are an integral part of everything that we do here. Value your team, give them credit, share successes with them.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something that the listeners might find comical. I find it comical, but when I started, I was, of course, a lot younger and up against a lot older farts. And to be honest, they were typical insurance people, kind of boring. And heck, I was a young guy, and I'm just, I'm out there pretty much feeling like I've sold myself to the devil. I'm just pounding the streets. I mean, it's amazing how I really just dug in, and I was never going to lose anyway. So I started writing business, and I was the only one celebrating. So me being the smart ass that I am, I went out and got wasn't that big, but it was an old time bell. And my wife, to this day, I'll never forget, I was in our garage and I'm screwing it to this piece of wood I found. And she said, what are you going to do with that? I said, I'm going to take it in the office. I'm going to hang it on the wall. Next time I write an account, I'm going to bang the heck out of this bell. And I did. And oh my gosh, people came out of their office. What happened? What happened? And I'm like, we wrote it. And it was like, and to me, that was kind of, I guess, the beginning of feeling that I'm celebrating with other people. And again, the old farts were like, that young buck, whatever. But
yeah, now we have an old school bell here. One of those old big. It's awfully loud, and we ring it during sales meetings or whenever somebody wants to ring it to celebrate. The idea is we come together and we talk about the success, and it could be either at a sales meeting or somebody might want to do it just in the middle of the day. Bring everybody together. We have we have the backup team there to celebrate everybody's part in this. And I think, I know we're kind of getting off of practice and kind of moving in other areas, but practicing celebration, practicing the victories, celebrating the victories can be very, very important.
You guys, those are such great ideas. And you get that esprit de corps going, even in the case, Christian, early on, where you were the only one writing business. I'm sure that once you started ringing that bell, it kind of got other people pumped up and motivated too, right?
Yeah, I think it also scared some of the old farts, like, uh-oh.
You bet. Hey, Charlie, when's the last time you rang a bell? Hey, Jane, didn't you ring a bell 2 years ago? I don't think I've heard one since then.
Stop ringing that bell.
Yeah.
What? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Well, guys, as we kind of wrap up this episode, I think this has been great. Each one of you take 30, 60 seconds with some closing thoughts. What would you challenge our listeners with when it comes to never stop improving, continue to practice? What would be a challenge you have for them?
Well, I think a big challenge, and I'll do it really quickly. I'm going to go back to goals. I'm going to go back to set goals, make sure those goals are clearly understood, review those goals daily if you can, weekly at the very least. That should keep your motivation going. Never settle for average. Those goals need to drive you to be a preeminent producer and celebrate those milestones along the way as you grow.
That's good.
Okay. I would say, just to keep it really simple, if you're not practicing, start practicing, make it a practice. I've practiced in front of a mirror many times, and that to me is helpful. But it's super helpful to practice with your associates because they'll pick up things that you're not picking up. So if you haven't started, do it. If you have gotten out of the habit, which as I mentioned before, from time to time in my agency, we've gotten out of that habit, So I would say do it because the things you will learn from it, guaranteed, if you've never done it, the things you will learn from it are invaluable.
I was trying to say, Matt, also in regards to you, and I'm a little challenge, but is also videotape it. Be able to see yourself. If you're not using mirrors, videotape it. It's amazing.
Yep.
My challenge is make yourself a vision board, or go out and buy a small Porsche Matchbox, stick it on your desk. Do whatever it takes to have a motivating factor stare you in the face every single day. And you'll be surprised when you actually obtain those goals and look back on it and say, wow, I did it.
Yep. Don't practice with your spouse. I did it once, and she said, really? Our financial fortune is in your hands, and you're saying this kind of stuff? So I stopped practicing with her. It just didn't. Of course, that was my first wife. Second wife, I got it right. She's delightful.
All right, guys, I hope you got a lot of good stuff out of that. I can't stress the importance of implementing. You have to implement what you're being taught here. And I really encourage you guys, take the time to implement those challenges that the coaches gave at the very end there. It is so extremely important to never stop improving and to really drive yourself forward and have a clear vision of what it is that you're going after. So implement today, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Preeminent Producer Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Preeminent Producer Podcast.